Good evening. I want to welcome you to our Citizens for Strong Oshkosh Outlook 2015. My name is Paulette Feld. I'm a member of CSO, and I kind of have the triple crown because not only am I alumni here at UW Oshkosh, for who the center was partially built, but also I work here at UW Oshkosh. So I kind of have the triple crown tonight. Welcome again to tonight's program, and I'd like to introduce our moderator for tonight, John Nichols. I know him as the retired director of Oshkosh Public Library, and I think a lot of you out there do too. So I'm going to let John take over while I run the PowerPoint, and he'll introduce our speakers for the night.
I should just say, just briefly, Citizens for Strong Oshkosh is an informal group of citizens and community leaders who came together really a few years ago with an interest in, an abiding interest in, and a concern about what we characterize as our public infrastructure. And that is a very wide array of things from both the state and local levels in terms of schools, city, county, justice system. There are a whole host of things that we both try to learn more about and educate the community more about in terms of not only what those things are, but also secondarily the fact that the state often takes actions like they're going to be taking before too long, that several months down the road have a huge impact at those local levels. And so we're often trying to make you aware of the fact that they may be doing things that if you're not paying attention now, 6 or 7 months from now, there's going to be a lot less to be able to do about it because of the fact that they're done with their budget or their policy activities. So with that in mind, this is kind of one of those programs, and our third annual Oshkosh Outlook gives each of the speakers an opportunity in about 5 to 7 minutes to kind of just highlight what they see getting ready to happen of significance in the next year, in 2015. And that will involve Mark Harris, who's our Winnebago County executive, Stan Mack, who is the superintendent of schools of the Oshkosh Area School District, Mark Roloff, city manager for the City of Oshkosh, Melissa Cohn, executive director of the Fox Valley Technical College Oshkosh campus, and sitting in for our new chancellor, who will be on board before too long, is Petra Roeder, who had served as the interim chancellor at the university. So we'll be going in the order that the slides show up, and if you want to get started with the first slide, we'll have Mark Roloff, city manager of the City of Oshkosh.
There's a variety of things I could talk about. I think it's relevant to talk about state aid because a lot of people don't necessarily recognize the connection that even local governments have with the reliance on state revenues. We rely on the state revenues for about 25% of our general fund, and those revenues have essentially been frozen and in some cases decreasing over the last few years. So as we're preparing our 2015 budget, those are just one of many limitations that we have. Case in point, there's a program, and it only amounts to about $1 million only in a $70 million budget, but it bears discussing. There's a payment for municipal services program that the state has had in place since the 1970s. It's intended to reimburse the city for in Oshkosh's case, police and fire services that are provided to properties that are owned by the state. So that includes the university as well as the prison, the mental health institution, just the different facilities that we have that are owned by the state. Back in the 70s, this program was funded at 100%. So if we spent $100 on police and fire benefiting the state-owned facilities, we received $100 in turn. That back about 10 years ago, it had eventually dwindled over those 30 years to about 80 cents on the dollar. Next year, we're looking at about 44 cents on the dollar. So in the span of 1 decade, that program has been gutted by 1/2. Part of that's because more municipalities are going to that program. They've identified a little DNR office or something, but it still bears the point that state aid is going down. Our shared revenue program was cut significantly in 2011 as a result of Act 10. The idea was that the revenues were going down from the state. It's called the shared revenue program for a reason, so we had to share in those reductions. Now that the state has reported that revenues are going up, we have not seen any corresponding increase as the tide is going up. And I think if it's a true shared program, it's something that we need to take a look at. Levy limits are in place. They're really inconsistent rules because as opposed to taking a look at individual situations, what the state pretty much does is take a snapshot and say that's where you're at, and those are the rules that you're under. So if we find savings in one year, it's very difficult to carry them over to future years, and that inconsistency makes it difficult for us because it always seems like there's a maxim that you have to tax to the max. Quite honestly, we don't want to tax to the max, but there's disincentives built in there, and that makes it difficult for the council to make some balanced decisions as time goes on. Council has really been focusing on our debt as a portion of our maximum amount allowed under state law. Our state law says that we can have no more than 5% of our equalized value in debt, and we're actually at 76% of that limit. The council would like to get that down to 70% because a lot of the rating agencies that look at debt issues evaluate us on that. And that's going to require us to limit our borrowing over the next decade to about $11.4 million a year. That's what we've identified to get ourselves down to that level. At the same time, we had a liability on the books with the Wisconsin retirement system for some very old liabilities that we had when we had our own pension system and we went into the state system. We've essentially been paying them about 7.5% interest and really only been able to afford much less. The rate was based on some assumptions that never came to pass. So over time, our debt has gone up to $10 million. If we ignored it, in 20 years, that debt would grow to $16 million. We're making less than the interest payments on these, so we're actually getting more added to it. So the council made a bold decision, which I am very appreciative of saying we're going to incorporate that into our debt and get rid of it over the next 20 years, and then we'll have it paid off, and this debt that's been on the books with the city for over 50 years will finally be relieved. Health insurance costs continue to rise. I don't think that's any secret to anybody. We're self-funded in our health insurance plan, so that's made it a little difficult for us. And we're looking at $1 million increase across all of our different funds for next year. And that's going to be a real challenge in terms of trying to balance things out when you have frozen revenues and then expenditures that are continuing to spike. The council is evaluating a variety of different options. The budget that I proposed to them proposed a 4.5% tax increase. And obviously, in this day and age, that's very difficult to swallow. So they're evaluating different options, trying to incorporate managing our debt as well as managing our health insurance, along with these other challenges that we have on the revenue side. Meanwhile, we do have some other things that are going on. As you look across the river, the Public Works Field Operations Facility, which used to be the Central Garage, has been underway, and it is due to be completed in March, and then some of the accessory buildings will be done. So we're looking forward to that. It should be opening in March. Meanwhile, infrastructure needs continue. There was an article in the paper yesterday, or a letter to the editor saying, well, my street's worse than that street. You always have to take a look at the underlying utilities. That's really what drives a lot of this, and you're going to see more of those done. Mount Vernon, it's not because we love the library, which we do, John, so don't electrify. Just give me a few more seconds. But Mount Vernon has the ripe old age of 125-year-old sanitary sewer beneath them, and they're ready to collapse. We have to get those replaced, and those are the types of priorities that we take a look at when we're looking at our projects. And then, of course, the council is going through a strategic planning process and emphasizing debt management and infrastructure needs, as well as economic development. So those are some of the things that we're going to be working on in 2015.
You set a high bar for Melissa, who's our next speaker from Fox Valley Tech.
Well, Well, good evening. I would like to update you a little bit about what's happening with Fox Valley Technical College, and if you'll bear with me a little bit, I'd like to start from the bottom and work my way up, because I think the number one bullet I'd like to spend the most of my time with. So as far as updates, I just want to share with you our referendum. You know, in 2012, we passed a very successful referendum. Our last project out of 5 buildings has been completed. It's the Public Safety Training Center up in Appleton. 75 acres of training for our first responders. It's classroom as well as tactical areas. We also have a FedEx plane that was Boeing 727 that was donated to the college. That's on the property as well. That facility will be open for classroom training starting in January, and we hope to have an open house in spring. And if you want to see something that's really spectacular, you'll have to come up and see that new facility. It's a one-of-a-kind, state-of-the-art facility, and will probably the one and only in the Midwest. So it's got some really exciting equipment, tactical facilities, a little village that firefighters, EMS, police can all train together, as in reality, what they do in day-to-day life. I want to just update you a little bit about our partnerships. We have currently a partnership with the Oshkosh Area School District that we have been planning and working on for a couple of years, but it came to fruition this fall, and that's in IT, information technology. It's a career pathway, and we're working with students at both North and West in preparing them for IT careers. It's been successful, and we plan on doing a phase 2 next year. This year we're doing an A+, it's industry certified certificates in A+ and C+, and next year we want to do some computer support stuff as well. So that's been a great partnership. Speaking of partnerships too, I want to talk about a community partnership. Citizens for Stronger Oshkosh had a group together a couple weeks ago called Amplify. That's a group of business people and educators that are working towards increasing awareness within the community of IT, information technology, as a career in the industries in Oshkosh. We've got a burgeoning IT community, and we want to see what we can do in terms of getting students more involved in IT as a career. So that Amplify group is doing a lot of work. And lastly, with our UWO partnership, bringing engineering to the Valley, we're working in collaboration with UWO, Green Bay, and the other facilities of New Era to bring engineering, electrical, mechanical, and environmental. Those credits, students can start at the technical college, and those credits transfer in totality to the different systems. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit more about the governance and funding structure. And Tom Grogren agreed to add this to my slide today. I don't know if you are familiar with back in January of last year, of this year, Governor Walker decided that he wanted to present some major tax changes, and one of those are specific to property taxes. And what they did with some of the state surplus is they took $406 million and bought down the mill rate for the technical college system. So for the first time in our history, over 100 years, the state will be paying the majority of our budget. We're concerned about that, and that's one of the things I wanted to share. Obviously, as taxpayers and property taxpayers, you're going to see within the next couple weeks a tax bill that has a line for the technical college system reduced by 40 to 45%. That was as a result of that state surplus. As taxpayers, we're going to all enjoy that, but what I want you to think about is how does that get provided in the years to come. That happened in January. In March, the legislature brought together a joint legislative council special committee. Now, they do this all the time. Some of these, 5, 6, 7 of these committees are put together. This one, however, has a very specific task. And if you read above on the PowerPoint, you'll see that it's not wishy-washy and it's very specific. They want to look at the current governance model in the interest of transferring that governance to the Wisconsin Technical College System Board. And the other piece of it is to examine current funding with a preference toward reassigning current local property tax revenue to a broader tax source. We're fearful of this committee and what this committee is looking at. Number one, as I mentioned, it will be the first time the state is paying the state is paying for the bulk of, I shouldn't say the bulk of, but the majority of the income for the college. We're concerned too, the other piece of it is the governance piece. It's both about funding and governance. What seems to concern the legislators is that our board of trustees is not elected, it's appointed. It's a 9-member board, but what we need for folks to understand is that board is not appointed by our president or our leadership. It's appointed by the chairpersons of the K-12 boards. So those people are elected. Those 28 school districts that have a chairperson, they are the people that determine who sits on our board. So we want to make sure people understand that the governance issue and the funding issue are of major concern to us. And of course, this joint legislative committee has met twice now, and it last met at the end of September. And the reason we feel that it's delayed meeting again is because they wanted to see the outcome of the race, the government race. So we do believe it's going to meet again soon, and our major concern is that the task and the outline task, that those dollars that and this governance and state control will be submitted into the budget for the 15-17 biennial budget without having folks participate or have any voice in that concern. So I'll leave it at that.
Our next speaker, Stan Mack, Superintendent of the Oshkosh Area School District.
Thank you very much, and I'm really pleased to be here once again. I'm glad that I discovered that I have been here at the inaugural event and been here 3 consecutive years as part of this outstanding community forum. This evening, in a very rushed fashion, and those who know me well know that I cannot do anything in 7 minutes, but I'm going to honor the rules, and that's why you got as much paper as you did, because frankly, the story is far bigger for Oshkosh Area School District than the minutes allowed. First of all, I'd like to really respond back from the standpoint of what's happening in the schools today. We have outstanding teachers with outstanding principals delivering outstanding education to our children throughout the district. We have a staff that is working extremely hard with unique and new circumstances on a constant basis, and the bottom line issue is that our teachers deliver each and every day with a more and more needy population. In the packet of materials you received, you'll see that we're changing. We are about at the same level as we were last year with levels of poverty, about 41%. Final figures are still coming in on that, but 41% poverty, which is about right at the state average for poverty, which is about doubled since the year 2000 in the state of Wisconsin. Those numbers create a different environment to teach children that are coming from families and homes of poverty. It makes a whole big difference. We're gradually increasing and becoming, receiving more students of color. We have 18+% of students of color in the district. You have those statistics within the packet. That changes the environment as well. And in spite of all of the changes and the increased needs, and one of the things that's really not listed anywhere, but in reality is a is a major change. We're discovering, and we're discovering it's not a uniquely Oshkosh issue, is more and more our teachers and our schools are experiencing within children coming to school undiagnosed and demonstrations of and unremediated issues regarding mental health conditions for children. Mental health in our schools is a statewide issue that we struggle with in every school district, and the traditional special education programs are not designed to set up and catch those areas, and that makes teaching much more complicated. The excellence and recognition continues to go on. As Melissa indicated, we have a very strong partnership with a number of programs integrated with both college credit as well as high school credit in partnership with the technical college, as well as with UWO in large numbers of students participating in dual credit, of which in both the fact of Fox Valley Technical College as well as University of Wisconsin system, the number one issue that parents look at this age with high school students is how can we save money in going to post-secondary education, and those dual credit options are wonderful options for parents and students to continue on. The teaching and focus on teaching is something that I think is particularly recognition that I'm very proud of, is the fact that 3 of our elementary schools were recognized this fall as beating the odds schools. They were honored in Madison with recognition for having achieved the higher level of academic outcomes than would be expected for their level of poverty. Washington School, which has our highest level of poverty in the school district, was one of those, and they were recognized for the 8th consecutive year. Just simply outstanding responses to the needs. And that comes from the dedication of high quality teachers staying with students in those particular schools who know how to reach out to families. That partnership with families is a critical piece. The strategic, also I should recognize that North High School was recognized nationally for its Beating the Odds schools on the Newsweek magazine's study of secondary schools. That kind of recognition. It's easy for schools in wealthy communities to have high recognition because all I have to do is look at their social economic status or their level of poverty, and I can predict that they'll be on the top of the list. But when you're a beating the odds school, you are achieving where the needs and the competency of teachers has to be far greater. And please understand, that makes all the difference. Every classroom governed by a high quality teacher dedicated to a relationship with students makes a difference every day. I wanted to talk about the referendum for learning process. The initial results, as you probably follow along in the paper, last Monday, a week ago Monday, 805 teachers received individual devices, computers for their use, and I've had a couple people in the audience mention that they would like to get in line for that same connection. It's the first step on the way to being able to fully bring on board next year with all of our high school students the connection with individual technology, and our commitment that was part of the referendum will be that the following year, after the high school year, will be middle school, and then their 3rd grade through 5th grade in elementary, in engaging that process. The other part of the referendum results are we, for the first time, approached this school year without having to make budget reductions for the first time in 7 years. That's a major difference in the whole spirit and attitude that exists when we're trying to hold a school district together. Lastly, or second lastly, I want to just emphasize that although we could spend an hour, and Beth Wyman is here representing the leadership of Oshkosh for Education, we have for you the brochure that we used along with the state report card that outlines how our schools are doing relative to the state report card system, as well as within the brochure our percentage of tasks accomplished regarding the strategic plan that was supported and initiated and began in May of 2013 with the Board of Education approving it, and the support of Oshkosh for Education and the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation of providing the seed money for that service. Lastly, that's the downside. The downside is I need to share with you my concern for the future. If you look at the last two slides that are on the packet of the bar graphs, and Wisconsin is in a position for the future that I fear for its future. For years as a Minnesotan, I admired 3 states in the country for highest quality education. They were Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Massachusetts. If the present course of action of downfunding education in the state continues, we will be moving closer to its relative states, both in decrease in funding and in percentages, and we would never want to compare Wisconsin with Alabama. Remember, education is a 12, 13, and with our 4-year-olds, a 14-year initiative. It's an assembly line of knowledge and information to prepare children for Fox Valley Technical College, for UWO system, and any other post-secondary institution, or for a career in life. If we fail children at any grade, at any time, we will be permanently impairing their success. As we go into this next legislative session, I am fearful for looking at any new revenue, of course, on the other side, which will result in more than likely cuts once again in the school district. The state of Wisconsin is not keeping up its responsibility for delivering quality education with just simply inflationary dollars. Wisconsin will sink from that top 3 to the bottom 5 in no time at all without a change in attitude about the importance of education. I believe I'm out of my time. I could talk to you for 4 hours about this or more.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
And we'll certainly have good opportunities during Q&A to amplify on any of these kinds of points the speakers are making, because they are doing yeoman's work to try to stay within about 7 to 8 minutes. Petra Roeder, University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh.
I'm sorry, there's going to be no handouts. I know you're all expecting that. That's kind of a Rick Wells kind of thing. We're going through a little bit of a transition. There are forests up north that are rejoicing because their lives have been spared. So we won't have any handouts. I'm basically serving in the capacity of, I guess, fill-in, the temp, because our chancellor, who is a brand new chancellor, is now in Washington, D.C., and he is lobbying already with our legislators in D.C. on a number of different topics, which include education, rural education, and Pell Grants. So I'm kind of the stand-in. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, and I served as the interim chancellor for about 2 months prior to that. So we have a brand new chancellor. His name is Dr. Andrew Levitt. He comes from University of North Georgia, and he's experienced his first winter weather over the last couple of days. So I promise that things will get better. His blood will thicken up a little bit, and after he gets some real boots and a hat, I think he'll be okay. His area of expertise is in the external area. He comes from the faculty ranks, where he was a professor in chemistry, but he has spent a number of years prior to that working in the area of advancement. So for him, relationships with all constituencies is very important, and that's one of his priorities: relationships on campus, relationship with our legislators, with our business folks, and with our community. He shares the same value as the university and our former chancellor of collaboration and innovation. So we're looking forward to great things from Dr. Levitt. As with any new chancellor, you can expect that we will be moving into a new strategic planning process. We have not done that for about 12 to 13 years. Some of you have seen that. You're probably sick and tired of seeing what we call the onion chart. We are now going to go ahead and move forward with a new strategic planning process, and that works out very nicely because we are moving into our HLC, our Higher Learning Commission, reaccreditation process. They come onto campus in 2017, but there is a process that needs to be in place to do a self-study during the next couple of years. So I know that will be an engaging process, and we will be relying on on-campus, off-campus, and different stakeholders to help us with that process. Budget challenges, I could go on for 4 hours on that. We're experiencing the same kind of budget challenges that everybody else is. We are just into our second year of frozen tuition. We are anticipating that tuition will be frozen again for another 2 years. We have also experienced our pay plan, which was unfunded. So we have lots of challenges. We have some structural deficits. We will be asking for costs to continue. We're not sure we're going to get that. So we as a campus last year went through a process where we took about a 4% cut across the board, not across the board, but primarily in most of the areas, to be able to offset some of the structural deficit, and we're not quite sure if that will be enough. We'll have to wait and see what happens with the biennial budget. Just as my other esteemed colleagues have talked about the lack and reduction of state funding, we have seen a dramatic decrease in state funding, and then when you're not allowed to increase tuition and you're more and more tuition driven, you're kind of between a rock and a hard place budgetarily. So we also have moved forward in what some people have called the fund balance fiasco. Some of you may have seen that. It was portrayed in the media that we were sitting on all this money, that we had these little coffee jars dug up in our backyard of millions and millions of dollars that we were just sitting on. We have successfully moved forward to use the same nomenclature across the system, which is the same nomenclature that's used by the LAB, the Legislative Audit Bureau, to categorize the types of monies that we have. We have probably about $48 million in fund balances, and we have accounted for every single one of those pennies. So we know where those are going. We know what they're designated, what they're obligated for, what category they fit in. And I think we've done a good job educating the campus and hopefully the Oshkosh community as to what fund balances are and how we utilize those. We do that for STEP students, which is our Student Titan Employment Program, which is high impact learning, which helps our students to offset the cost of their education. Our nursing program, our engineering technology programs, those are the kinds of things that we want to be able to reinvest, and that's what we utilize those dollars for. So budget challenges are always on our radar screen. We also see Gordon in the audience. We have some challenges as it relates to facilities. We have millions of dollars in our fund balances that have been earmarked for projects that have not been moved forward or have been stalled. So it looks like we're sitting on a lot more money than we really are, that we have available to us. So we're kind of waiting to see what will happen with the next biennial budget. We're hearing that we can expect no increases in tuition, and no cost to continue. And one of the other aspects that we want to be able to forward is talent development, which hits into the next workforce and economic development. That has been a priority. We know that the university system and UW Oshkosh have been economic engines. We want to be able to continue to do that, to be responsive to the needs and the wants of our community and within our region and within our state. A classic example is the engineering technology program. We have been very involved in public-private partnerships such as the hotel, the Air Innovate Industrial Park. We're working on Amplify as well, and working with New North, which is the Northeast Wisconsin Economic Organization, to move forward in the area of IT development. So we know that is something that's very important for us to do, but once again, we need to have the flexibility to invest monies into that and to have monies to invest into that. So it will be a very challenging year or so. Point of Pride is actually our university studies program, which is a radical, innovative general education program which really flips the classroom, and that allows our students to get the competencies that they will need as they move on in their college career, as well as when they move into the work world. So we're very excited about that. One of the aspects is called Quest 3. We've implemented that this year, and that is where we actually take our students and we take them out into the community, and it's service-based learning, being able to take theory and put it into practice and impact and serve the community in which they belong to.
Last speaker, but not least, Mark Harris, our Winnebago County Executive.
Well, when I talk about things that you'll notice that are changes in the county over the next year, the first one comes to mind is courthouse security. The state Supreme Court gives recommendations on security guidelines for courthouses, and we recently did a study trying to incorporate all the suggested changes from those guidelines. The price tag came up to about $15 million. And a consensus seems to be forming on the board to go back to a plan we had about 15 years ago of doing a single-story addition to the courthouse that would accommodate metal detectors. That's not been decided on by the board, but I believe we'll see that project underway by the end of next year. And I think it's very likely that the board will do that more modest project because of the high price tag on the overall project. So I think that's something you might see at least started sometime next year. Another area, the Airport Industrial Park, this is really done in partnership with the city, and the city has been a wonderful partner on this. Actually, the city's been leading the way. But there was Department of Defense grants, there was also Economic Development Administration grants and a TIF district, and that's going to provide sufficient funds for the city to start putting the streets, water, and sewer into an 80-acre parcel that's shared by the city and the county. And it's intended to attract industries related to aviation. We're still looking at exactly what niche we might move into. One possibility is that we'll really focus on experimental aviation and try and bring several of the players in experimental aviation to the area and form a cluster, although it could go in a different direction. But we're looking for companies that would benefit from having a first-class tower and runways and not having to compete with commercial air traffic for gate times. The county's been on a program now for a couple years of reducing the outstanding county debt. We bond every November, and then our principal and interest payments are in April. And so as of next April, the debt will be the lowest it's been in decades. And in fact, over the last 10 years, we will have reduced the county's debt by about $23 million. Part of that is being very careful about what new projects we do, although we always do some large road projects and have done other big projects like the engineering classrooms at UW-Fox Valley or building the new nursing home. We have invested in the community, but we've been doing it in a very controlled way, and we've been able to reduce the county's outstanding debt substantially over the years. The last item, and the one I want to focus on the most, is concerns about future revenues. One of the ideas being kicked around in Madison is to eliminate the personal property tax on business. And while that certainly would be popular from the perspective of business, and I'm not sure it's the best designed tax because there's so many exceptions now, when you look at it from the reverse side, the impact on those entities that collect property taxes, primarily municipalities, counties, and school districts, it would be a loss of revenue to us without any proposed way to recover that. Should the business personal property tax be repealed, the county would stand to lose about $1.2 million in revenues. And because we're under levy restraints, that would have to be expressed in spending cuts, reductions in services, rather than a shift onto the property tax. Probably the greater concern is with the state's budget. And the county and the cities, the school district, the university, all get their money from GPR revenues. And the best way to describe this is think of a big pie, and the ingredients going into the pie are state sales tax and state income tax primarily. Those are the big ingredients. And then the pie, when it's done, is cut up into slices, and some of the bigger slices include K through 12 education, the university system, aid to municipalities such as cities and counties, and corrections. There's other things in there, but those are the big slices. Well, the concern is twofold. One, you heard earlier that the technical school for the first time is going to be funded primarily out of GPR. So that pie is going to be cut up into more slices than it has been in the past. The second concern is for the size of that pie, because the state did do some very large tax cuts, some of which are still phasing in over the next couple of years. It's possible that the size of that pie will be reduced as well. And that's a real concern. When the Legislative Fiscal Bureau did their 2-year projections, they projected fiscal 2014, that's the year that ends June 30th of 2014 that recently ended, that was projected to have an increase in revenue of roughly 1%. They projected that 2015, and this is after the tax cuts, would have an additional 3.5% revenue increase. However, 2014 actually came in under 2013, and year-to-date revenues in fiscal 2015, which started July 1st, have been running 2.9% behind 2014, so it's also running behind 2013 numbers. So it's possible that changes in the economy might change those numbers before the year is out, or that changes in the timing of the state's revenues having to do with withholding will also help change that mix. But I actually have a hobby of projecting those numbers based on what we know so far. And an educated guess would be that the state's going to fall between $600 million and $1 billion short of those projections. And that's not talking about a next 2-year budget. That's talking about the fiscal year we're already in. The 2015 fiscal year that runs from July 1st through June 30th, 2015. If that does in fact prove to be true, the state will have to do very large cuts of state aids for some of those slices of the pie that are not in our budgets. So it's quite possible the university won't receive significant monies they've already been promised, or that the city will receive significantly less state aids than what they've put into their 2015 budget. The same would be true for all those other things. So the concern is that the pie might be both smaller and cut into more pieces, so that the monies that all of us at this table are expecting might turn out to be significantly less than what we've budgeted. Now, if you're good at playing this game and worrying about future problems, it helps you avoid them, but sometimes some of your fears don't come true, they don't come to fruition. But on this one, stay tuned. Later this week, you'll get October tax revenues reported by the Department of Revenue. And that will then give us 4 years of the current fiscal year that we can compare against, 4 months of the current fiscal year that we can compare against the same 4 months of the prior year. And that should give us some sense of where we stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. What a picture. You've heard the concerns from them and got a chance to look out into this next year. Now's a chance for your questions. We've got a great group of people here to answer some of them for you.
I think so. Hi, I'm Gordon Mintz. I guess my question for all of you, and thank you for the great timing as we head into a new legislature and a new budget process. Are what we're hearing from all of you, what your peer counties or peer school districts, peer cities, other technical college districts, other state institutions, similar? Are there any differences? And obviously 72 counties is a stronger voice than one county. Is everybody sort of coming at it from the same standpoint about the challenges going forward that we face?
So just to restate a little bit, Gordon is asking whether our situation for Oshkosh and Winnebago County and school district and university here are unique, or do they seem to be pretty commonly held around the state, and which one of you would like to tackle that first, or for everybody?
I just want to note that we as a system are putting together a plan where we're trying to find champions and advocates for us to be able to explain this in a not university-ease kind of language about what this means and what the constraints are, and what are the ramifications to the economy, as well as the quality of life within our state. And our focus is primarily on the talent management, which is the development of our students, the development of our faculty and staff, and then the economic impact that we have. We are also asking for flexibilities. So we're hamstrung in the sense that we can't raise tuition, but we're getting less GPR funding like everybody else is. Our portion of the pie is much smaller than it was when I first came to the UW system 15 years ago. It's probably half of what it used to be. It's about 20% now. When I first came in, it was closer to 56%. So we have to be more entrepreneurial and really look at some different ways that we can manage our monies and the revenues that we have, and to generate new revenues. But sometimes we need to have that flexibility, which we do not have from a state perspective. But I think that everybody else within our system is feeling the pain, some more than others. We've been very good here at UW Oshkosh. We've been able to take we don't quite have the hobby that Mark has, but we've looked at the numbers. Most of us have worked in the system long enough that we have an understanding of what's coming down the pike. And we've been very good entrepreneurs, transparent, really soliciting feedback from our constituencies and our campus to really kind of make sure that we allocate and realign the monies that we do have and be good stewards of those monies. But system-wide, that it varies, and we're really going to make a concerted effort to champion the entire system as we move forward in this next biennial budget. So, which is probably more than we wanted.
From both a regional and a statewide perspective, school districts across the state are feeling identical pain. It depends upon where they're at. For example, as we clearly enunciated through the referendum campaign last spring, we were locked in at a lower student cap expenditure rate back in 1992-93. We're worse off than many, but our rural small school districts are probably the most pained by all of this because they're suffering the greatest. They have significant decline in enrollment as well as the limitations on finances. So we being among the top largest 12 to 15 school districts in the state, we certainly feel it differently than what suburban Milwaukee, richer school districts feel it, but we are common with other school districts across the state, and I'm hearing the same message from my colleagues across the state on the limitations and the worry about the future.
On a micro level, some of the things I talked about earlier, our debt issues are really something that we bear responsibility for. Years of ignored infrastructure, that's something that we have to solve on our own. But there are many issues, certainly at the state level, that I think we share in common with a lot of our fellow municipalities. And when you think about it, the League of Wisconsin Municipalities is putting forward what they're calling a partnership for progress. And it's really to say that economic development in the state, it really starts at the local level. We're the ones that are out there recruiting businesses, encouraging businesses, providing incentives to business to do things. And some of the things they look for a good infrastructure. They look for good quality of life. All those things are important because the infrastructure is almost a minimum requirement. You want to know you're going to have good streets. You want to know you're going to have good schools. That's as much as part of economic development in the package that I'm presenting to somebody as the street. So we all bear that together. We're very fortunate to have an excellent school system up and down the line. But when we come to other issues in terms of police and fire, and then other quality of life, parks, those are things that businesses look for, and we want to impress upon the state, the legislator, the executive, that we need to have strong local government, strong infrastructure in order for us to attract businesses, in order for businesses to expand, because those are the types of things that they're looking for. So I think those are some of the things that we share in common throughout the state.
You know, Gordon, you asked about the 72 counties. I don't think there's uniform opinion as to what's happening. I think there's fear across all 72 counties of what the long term will bring. But when people talk about the state budget, I think there's a presumption that for most counties that they need the money so badly that it can't go away. But we all know that it can, or that there can be other changes. And even within the state legislature, the way people talk about the budget, they tend to change between two different measures. And, you know, they'll talk about the baseline budget numbers and talk about how those have no increased revenue or expending built into them. And when you try and switch up to, well, where do we stand for this current fiscal year, it gets very confused with the terminology used for the 2-year, you know, baseline budget number plus cost to continue additions, which is a whole different measure. And that's something that's come up over and over again with the state budget. It's like, you know, when I came into this room, I was 6 feet tall, but now I'm 72 inches tall. And, you know, oftentimes when people are talking about the state budget, they talk about that 2-year baseline number. That's where that 3.6 million shortfall came from. And then they talk about the ending balance in terms of how much money is in the general fund, which is a completely different measure. If you compare The one number, we're right where we were where we started 4 years ago. It looks like that baseline budget number with cost of continues numbers is going to be somewhere between 3.8 and $4 billion in the red. If we talk about general fund balances, then we should be comparing an $85 million general fund beginning balance 4 years ago with whatever general fund balance we're going to have at the end of this fiscal year. The problem is that number is very likely to be a negative number until some sort of budget correction is made. But I honestly think there's more denial than fear.
As far as the technical college system is concerned, all 16 colleges will be equally impacted on the governance and the funding. So it will be the same throughout the state. Everybody's feeling that.
It was mentioned earlier that Citizens for Strong Oshkosh had held a CSO conversation a couple of weeks ago with the group from Amplify Oshkosh and a lot of the IT people around the community. And one of the questions I posed, particularly to the business owners in that room, about what they needed government to do or not do that would enhance their ability to grow their businesses and attract new businesses and attract IT people, the one answer I got back was maintain and improve the quality of life in the community. Because to attract professional people to the community, we need to show them the things that they could get anywhere else if we're going to get them to come here and either start their businesses or grow their businesses or work for us. And you're hearing that now out of everybody on this panel about concerns about how to maintain the quality of life facing the budget uncertainties they're facing. Other questions?
Stan Mack, you mentioned two things, the high poverty rate, and then you mentioned increase more students of color are entering the school system here. And I wonder if you could go into some detail to explain what is that you said that these changes are impacting the educational environment. And what is it about the increase in the students of color that's impacting the educational environment?
So Stan's being asked to amplify further about the issue of diversity of the student body and the increases in the poverty rate of the students in the school district. Sure. More about the diversity.
There's a high correlation between poverty and students of color that is certainly there, but what we're facing most often is the fact that being prepared in many ways, I kind of tongue-in-cheek had said that the Oshkosh community and the Oshkosh School District is a little bit from a standpoint of differentiation, a little bit of Lake Wobegon. It is not used to and prepared to deal with the diversity that exists in the community and is growing, and that the needs of our faculty, administration, to attend to the building of relationships, particularly with students of color, that is essential to success for students in school. Our folks are not skilled in that area, and that's an investment in training that needs to go on. Part of what we are doing so right now in the whole PBIS training in working and building the positive reinforcement of behavior is part of the issue at hand. The issues of building relationships are critical, and secondly, we struggle along with every one of our sister school districts in the state, and not just in the state of Wisconsin, but in Minnesota. I struggled for years with trying to diversify our workforce. Having available teachers and administrators of color working in the school system is a critical variable to improve and garner the expectation that children see teachers, paras, bus drivers, anyone who looks like them and can relate to them. But most of all, the issue is understanding that in order to succeed with every child, regardless of racial background, is the issue of building a relationship. Individuals need to know that they're cared about, that their teacher knows and understands them, checks on how they're doing, the relationship with the family, as well as just the encouragement that comes with a built relationship. You cannot expect a child to learn if you do not have a built-in relationship with the child, and that's key to the success in school.
Other questions? Yes.
My question is actually for Stan Mack. I'm sorry to make you almost sit down.
You gave me a chance to retrieve my lunch there.
In the paper today, it was mentioned that you were looking at a wage increase for administrators. What does that look like for your budget?
So Stan's been asked to address the wage increase for school district administrators. Sure.
I'm glad you asked that question because it was misstated in the newspaper, and we've worked hard to get it corrected. If you look at the electronic version, there is a correction on that. We have in board policy every 2 years to do comparisons with a select group of districts that the board had agreed on many years ago to be our comparable districts, and we completed that survey, and that always goes to the board for approval. We have 9 individuals out of 36 or so licensed administrators that are below the range for that entire area and in this case we have assistant principals who right now are some $4,000 thereabouts under the range for the lowest paid administrators there. In fact, right now it's we're almost at $10,000 from the midpoint of the range. They're not even in the range. We have several other positions that are outside the range. No position that is in the midpoint or even in the range is being adjusted. Only 9 individuals who presently don't fit in the range. To give you a sense of what we are facing, since June of 2000, 54 administrators have been replaced in the district. We lose them continuously to other places. And since the time that Mike Nault, our Executive Director of Human Resources, and I joined the district in June of 2012, we've lost 26 administrators. The turnover is costly and more costly, and we need to get the base administrators into the ranges that are there. How does it affect in the budget? We built that into anticipating some increases to come into compliance. We balanced the budget with those numbers in mind, and what we were able to do is, because of our work on our district health insurance program, including a partnership with the City of Oshkosh and Winnebago County, we had anticipated a 10% increase in health insurance that was built into our budget, and we'll be at 7%, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars of savings that are as a result of increasing our co-pays and deductibles. So we have it within the range. So the total increase as proposed is just under $26,000 total for all of those 7 administrators that would be adjusted, that we would hold on to in our ranks, and part of that contribution is that when I agreed to another 2-year contract 2 years ago, I waived no increases in compensation in order to maintain the balance in the budget, and the board will be taking credit for not having any increases for the superintendent in order to accomplish that. My previous comments, I left the chart back at the table, but regarding administrative costs, if you look in the pie charts, our administration and clerical costs in the district are 6% of the total budget, and the last statistics we have from just a year ago is that of the 426 school districts in Wisconsin, 423 expend more per student than the Oshkosh district, and we expect we're going to stay pretty close to that 3rd, 4th, or 5th lowest spending district in the state administratively, even with this $26,500 adjustment.
You've talked a lot about the property tax. Any impact that you might anticipate with the recently unveiled Department of Transportation proposal for revamping the $600 and some odd million hole in the state transportation budget that would affect any of you? Mark?
You know, we use fuel, and we could be impacted by some of the changes proposed there, as well as individual drivers, but I was kind of relieved because a trial balloon that was floated a year ago was to divert the sales tax on new car sales from that GPR pie I talked about and to put that directly into transportation. And had that been done, again, that would make that pie significantly smaller because a significant portion of sales taxes come from the sale of new vehicles. So when this proposal came out and it contained more registration fees and gas taxes, in some ways it was a relief that they weren't focusing on diverting money from GPR to fund the highway fund. And I don't know if what's proposed will go forward, but that would be preferable to me than having them take large amounts of money from general purpose revenue and moving that over to the highway fund, because that has been happening in recent years. You know, we just had an amendment on the ballot to prevent money from being taken from the highway monies and moved back into GPR. But the truth is, in recent years, the money's been flowing the other direction. And if they find alternate sources of revenue, in my mind, that would be preferable to diverting money out of general purpose revenue that funds other things such as schools and municipalities.
With respect to the transportation dollars, there's a couple issues. I think Mark talked about where the funding is going with gas tax dollars and potentially shifting things around. The other thing that concerned me, even from the outset, when the discussion of a constitutional amendment to which was adopted to restrict transportation dollars for transportation, which from a policy standpoint I totally supported. I was a little iffy in terms of a constitutional amendment to do so, and one of the concerns is really actually it seems to be coming to bear because the definition of transportation is in the eye of the beholder, and now the discussion is going that transportation dollars should not be funding transit. And for years, public transit has been funded with transportation dollars. And if that, again, goes to, as Mr. Harris was pointing out, goes to the GPR pie, adding in the technical colleges along with the usual suspects, which are cities, counties, and school districts, and the university system, you're going to have yet another competitor for those dollars. And public transit relies very heavily on transportation dollars. If they are excluded from that, they're probably going to be facing some very dire circumstances. I don't want to alarm everybody because it's just an idea being thrown out there, but it was a concern that I had from the outset, and it seems to be starting to come to roost only 2 weeks after the election.
Other questions? Yes.
Still for technical college. What is planned for Oshkosh for expansion? Appleton's getting all the buildings and programs. What's coming out of it?
So asking to basically look at, with all of the expansion that's been going on in Appleton, are there any plans for new things coming down the pike for Oshkosh?
As part of the referendum, there was $1 million set aside to purchase property in the Oshkosh area, and that's still on the docket. There's still negotiations going on, but I'm pretty sure that's going to happen within a couple months.
Is that for a new campus building?
It's strictly for property at this point.
If there are no other questions, I'd like to thank everybody that came tonight, and I'd like to join me in thanking our panel members for being here.